teach you that energy systems are relevant to market systems, as I will show you right now, because there is some kind of link. In this graph you see the development of the oil price for the last, let's say, 20 years. And oil was very, very cheap because, as you know, it's a more or less dangerous, poisonous substance that nobody wanted to touch 100 years ago, and then we found means of getting rid of it, and that is burning it. And the price was always so low, and we were struggling for the price not to collapse even lower. And then a few years ago, as you can see, about the year 2000, it started to increase. And it almost escalated since the year 2005. And within 2 years, since the year 2006 to 2007, it then went up in 2008 from roughly $20 to $50 to $150. As you can see, the predictions from the International Energy Agency always predicted low prices for the future, for the next decades. So nobody was prepared for this development. Nobody believed that this ever could happen. And then the only answer to that would be supply was smaller than demand. Market rules say if supply is smaller than demand, then prices can escalate because now speculation is possible. If you have a surplus, you cannot speculate. The price will never go up if there is a surplus. If there is something missing, you can speculate and the price can go up dramatically. Now, when you look at the history of last year, of the summer of last year, the price spiked in July. And we had the elections in the United States in September. Traditionally, oil prices go down when there are elections in the United States. This is populism at the market level. But we had some other strange events. We had one of the strongest hurricanes in history, Hurricane Gustav. It made even more damage than Katrina, at least to the oil industry, not to New Orleans. But at that time, when we had long gas lines in the United States, major cities ran out of gasoline in the United States. You have not read that in the newspapers, but this was in the south of the United States kind of a daily problem. At that time, the price collapsed. So with all the indicators that usually lead to a high price, suddenly the price started to collapse and it almost went down to $35 within months. If you see this development, this is not normal. This is not the market forces at work. There is some problem in the system. Now, we would link that to the financial crisis. There is some part of that. And you have to link that to the development of the oil system. Now that the industry crashed and oil consumption went down, suddenly supply probably seems to be higher than demand, and prices start to go up. So we are now back at 50, and I can guarantee you the price until summer of this year will increase very likely to a lot higher levels, because if the industry and if economy recovers, and this is what we are trying to do in order to save jobs and to put people back to work, then energy consumption will increase, and we will again hit the level where supply cannot meet demand. The driving force behind all that is a geologic event. It is the oil production curve, and this curve is heavily based on some characteristics of geology. And it is named after Myron King Hubbard, a geologist who basically found and discovered this relationship when he was the head of exploration at Shell. And he described this very simple curve. First, production grows and then it declines. This is how nature works. You get older, and when you're 30 or 40, you know, you're from the physical point of view, you're at your best age. And then no matter what you try, you just get older and you will no longer be as strong as you were. And that applies to the oil fields as well. Now, when people talk about when do the problems start, they always say when we run out of oil. And in the brain of most people, running out of oil means we're back at the end of that curve. There is no more oil. This is not when the problems start. The problem starts when the production starts to decline, because then every day you have less oil than the day before. So this is contraction in an economic system that is built on expansion, and this doesn't match. So then you get the real problems. Now you could say this is just theory, but when you look at the United States and you look at the production up until the year of 1970, every economist would have predicted this is the future. So you see the production grows and you say this is the growth of the future. Now when we look at the history books, you see a different development. You see that the production at that point started to collapse, and it was impossible, no matter how much money, how much tax cuts, how much government support, or how much technology was invented. It was impossible to reverse the trend. So the collapse of the production started, and adding Alaska and some Gulf of Mexico and other production only slowed the decline, but it did not reverse the decline. But there is another interesting aspect that you can see here. The consumption really growth in the way as they predicted the supply. So the only way for the United States to maintain in the way of the United States was to import this amount of energy from some other place, because you could no longer get it from the United States, once the biggest oil producer in the world. And this is a trend that you can see all over the place. So you have a peak in the production, after that you have a decline, and no matter what you do, this happens for every region, for every oil field, and basically it will happen for the world. We have examples in Europe. This is the oil production of Norway, and the same pattern. And here we have exact data, because in Europe you get real data from the governments for all the oil fields. It's not a trade secret. And you see a very typical pattern. You see that the big oil fields are discovered